Okay. So, hi everyone. Before we get started, we just wanted to say that you can continue to submit questions specifically for our talk in that Slack channel. We're going to try to finish early because we know everyone's really excited about the movie. You want to get out of here, meet up with people, and get in a theater that's actually going to be showing it because they will not be showing it in this theater. We will take questions at the end if we have time. Otherwise, submit them on Slack and we'll answer your questions.
Absolutely.
So without further ado, welcome to How to Avoid the Dark Side of UX. In this presentation, we'll cover the what of dark UX, why it happens, and how you can avoid it and help fix it if you see it within your organization.
Hell yeah. Let's do this.
So quick introductions. I am Rachel Banks. I'm a user experience consultant at Insight. I specialize primarily in research and strategy. I have a master's degree in human-computer interaction, and I am an Air Force vet.
I'm Mike Earley. I am currently a web developer at Insight. I've done probably 2/3 of the jobs in the software development lifecycle, however, so I've got a lot of experience in that regard. So that's why it says I don't specialize. But currently I specialize in front-end web development, so I guess I do specialize. I don't know. And yeah, I wasn't in the Air Force, but the Air Force is really cool, you know? So I support you being in the Air Force.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I appreciate your support. So we wanted to address this, and I'm sorry, this mic is very loud. I'm screaming at you, and I apologize. We wanted to address the burning question of why are we the only people presenting as a team? First and foremost, it's because we're here to fuck shit up. That's what we're doing. Secondly, it's because we had a conversation about dark UX when you first started.
Like a week after I started.
A week after you started, you were like, hey, you want to do a presentation? And I was like, I think so.
I don't know you.
So we talked about dark UX, how we were both interested in the topic, and how it would be interesting for us to present as a team because we represent different spectrums of the product development process and the design process. So I'm generally more on the front end with research and strategy, and he's more towards the latter part of the process with front-end development.
That's right. You were going to say back end.
I learned my lesson.
That saying that I'm on the back end when I'm actually on the front end, but I'm not on the front end of the software development process. I'm on the front end of the software process, which is on the back end of the software process.
So I just said the back end of the process.
That's right. Yeah.
Of the design process.
Yeah. The
Good.
front end.
The front end of the back end of the
Yes.
design. No.
You're on first?
You got it.
So, I don't know that I am a Shakespeare person, but my partner here is, and wanted me to throw out the quote here. If a rose by any other, I rewinded, didn't I? No, I didn't.
No, you
Okay.
got it.
If a rose by any other name would smell as sweet, then dark UX by any other name would be just as shitty. And dark UX has a lot of names. So I wrote down a few here. Asshole design. And if you're really into dark UX and asshole design specifically, there is actually a subreddit called Asshole Design. Check it out. Needy design is what Nielsen Norman calls it. Dark patterns, anti-patterns, and deceptive design. Those are just a few of the terms that we've come across during our research. Some people will tell you that anti-patterns are unintentional dark patterns, whereas dark patterns are intentional dark patterns. I don't know that I necessarily subscribe to that, but you will read some articles out there that distinguish between those two things in that way. So.
Yep.
Okay, so dark UX patterns are basically any design element that subtly push the user in a certain direction, a direction they really didn't intend to take. We have quotes, we have references to the quotes. If you want to look up the articles themselves later on, feel free to hit up those URLs and check them out. They're all good articles. All right, getting a little bit ahead of myself. What we're going to be doing in the first part of the presentation is we're going to go through some of the more common patterns that you're going to see out in the wild. We're not going to touch every single dark design pattern that we came across in our research. That was at probably 14 or 15 patterns. We needed to bring the presentation time down, so we're sticking to a few. I mean, more than a few, probably like 10, but we're not covering all of them. So with that said, we'll go ahead and get started. With what is arguably the most common design pattern that you'll see out there, and that is the unexpected modal. I don't know how to make this go away or move, and I recognize that it's in the middle of the screen. I apologize. I don't know what makes that go away. So we'll suffer through it together as a team.
If you could just send a message to someone at Google and ask them, that would be great. We can take this
Yes.
off the screen.
Yes. Okay.
Somebody knows somebody.
So unexpected modals manifest in a bunch of ways. The four most common ones that are related to dark patterns specifically are the exit intent modal, which is where if you scroll, I don't know what that word is, but it's not scroll. If you scroll your mouse above the browser view where the content's being rendered, the application will throw up the exit intent modal. They think that you might be navigating away from the page when in fact you might just be navigating to to hit the back button or to check a plugin or who knows, right? Could be doing a lot of things, not have an exit intent, could have accidentally moved the mouse up there. But they're going to give you the modal anyway because that's how the JavaScript works. The scroll timer, the scroll modal is another one that's very, very common. You scroll to a certain point in the length of the article and the modal pops up. Timer modal is similar concept, different trigger. You spend 10 seconds, 30 seconds, 90 seconds on the site, they throw up the modal. And then probably the least dark pattern modal is the user triggered modal where they've clicked on something somewhere. Normally that's like the user is actually intending to get a modal as a result, but not always. So those are different types of unexpected modal you'll see. They're dark patterns because when that modal pops up, and again, unexpected modal, the user's focusing their attention and their brain space on what they were looking at, and now you as a software developer, as a business, are breaking that focus and that spatial awareness of what they were looking at, and you're completely changing their mental awareness to something different that they probably didn't want to see in the first place and are probably going to escape or click out of. And now they have to regain their spatial awareness, their focus back on what they were looking at before. And as I just mentioned, it's frequently for something that they don't plan on doing anyway. So that's why it's a dark pattern. Modals are also typically not accessibility friendly. Frequently the focus of the cursor will stay on the primary page and not jump to the modal. There's a lot of bad development practices you can get into where you can really mess up the accessibility of a page because of unexpected modal. And finally, as of 2017, Google will start dinging your SEO and potentially even de-index you depending on the types of unexpected modals you're using and when you're using them. So from a business perspective even, you may think they're good business, but they're not good business because they're going to hurt your SEO rankings.
So the next example we're going to talk about is bait and switch. And if you look this up, there are a lot of different definitions. The one we're going to go with today is bait and switch is basically a pattern that advertises a free or reduced product when in fact that service or product is unavailable or stocked in limited quantities. So what happens is they lure you in with this and then suddenly they switch it, and then you're left with an alternate product that is similar to what you asked for, but usually more expensive. So I was on booking.com and I was looking up standard rooms for this weekend actually, and I clicked on this hotel because they had a standard room still available. When I got to this page, it said the room was no longer available, but they had an alternative to that. They had a couple of different ones, and they were, of course, more expensive than the one that I was looking up. You're going to see booking.com again. They employ a lot of these dark pattern practices, and just watch out for that later in the presentation.
This is actually an interesting dark pattern as well from the sunk cost fallacy perspective, because by the time you've gotten to this point, you've probably gone through several steps and spend a certain amount of minutes doing this process. And so you reach this point and you have to say to yourself, do I want to do this again, or do I want to pay 25 to 50 extra dollars to get this different room? And frequently people just stay on page and pay the extra money.
Right.
Because of that sunk cost fallacy of like, well, I might as well, I'm not going to find a better deal, so I might as well just stick with this deal and go with it. So, it kind of doubles up on the whole dark pattern thing.
Sure. It's how much is my time worth? Is it worth going through the pain of trying to find another room with the same amenities that I wanted in the first place?
That's right.
So the next example is confirm shaming. I think we've all probably experienced this. There was a Tumblr out there at some point in time, and I think maybe it still exists, I don't know, where you can go and look up some confirm shaming examples. The definition of confirm shaming is it's the act of guilting the user into opting into something. The option to decline is worded in a way that shames the user into compliance. The most common use is to get a user to sign up for a mailing list. It's often found in exit intent modals and pop-ups typically. I really like the example in the upper left-hand corner because it kind of uses reverse psychology to convince you to not cancel your subscription.
Okay. Rachel and I made a bet at the beginning of the presentation, sort of indirectly. We didn't actually bet anything, which was my bad, on whether or not I would use my note cards, because I've never used note cards before in my life when I do a presentation, but I'm using these note cards actually, so I win the bet, I guess.
You're welcome.
Yeah, there you go. All right, so we're going to talk about disguised ads, and you guys are developers for the most part, and if you're not developers, you're designers or QA or product owners. Almost everybody has tried to download software off the internet, and frequently you end up on a page like Softpedia, where you see the lovely, lovely disguised ad, dark pattern, in full display, like just pride of lions, everything's amazing.
That's why we were having problems.
Oh yeah?
Has anyone been able to hear him at all this whole time?
I'm so sorry.
All right.
It's going to get increasingly more interesting now.
Can you hear me now? Yes, excellent. Apparently my voice doesn't carry in a theater.
The people up there just did not care what you were saying at all.
You know what? I don't think a mic's going to help that. I really don't. But we're talking about disguised ads. You've seen this before. You've been to Softpedia. You've been to other download websites. There are at least four links on this page that could be how you download this software. Two of them actually download the software, and the two that I've highlighted do not, but they look like they would. And in fact, they use potentially more triggering visuals and words and are more prominent than something that, for example, the blue download now button that matches the blue of the header bar does not prompt you to want to click. So this is very, very common. A lot of people are going to go and they're going to click on that start button. In this instance, this is an interesting dark pattern because if you were a designer at Softpedia, you may not be able to talk Softpedia out of this dark pattern. And that's because that's a revenue driver for them. The more people that click on that big green start button, the more money they make, and they're perfectly cool with that. So you may not be able to talk them out of that dark pattern. Now,
Sure.
Hopefully you could, but again, sometimes you're going to run into situations where a business goal is clearly trumping a user goal, and the business is perfectly fine with that, and they don't plan on changing it.
Whoa, you're getting ahead of yourself. We'll talk about that later.
Ah!
All right,
See, that's what you get for being able to hear me.
ruining it.
Okay. Forced continuity, right? Amazon is a big fan of this. When you sign up for Amazon Prime, they have your credit card probably. It's probably set as a default credit card. This is all for convenience sake. However, if you sign up for Audible, for example, you don't tell Audible which credit card you want to use necessarily. You can go in and change it in settings, I'm sure. But they're probably going to just use your default credit card right out of the gate. Well, the thing that they don't tell you is they probably don't tell you they're going to do that, or at least if they do, it's in very small writing.
Sure.
And they're going to tell you that, hey, this is a 1 week free trial, and we're going to start billing you $14.95 at the end of that trial to the card that you didn't agree to get it charged to because we didn't ask you that question. So that's forced continuity, and even forced continuity is even on websites where you do enter credit card information as well, but maybe it's a 1 month trial, and you use the software 3 times in the first week, you decide it's not worth it, you forget about it. And then a month later, you get a bill. So that's what forced continuity is. The dark pattern obviously is billing those customers for those services when they may not have wanted to actually sign up for that service and start getting billed for it. You mentioned this the other day, a lot of folks are switching to models where they don't collect credit card information and they tell you, we're not collecting credit card information, your trial is good for a month, it's going to stop working at the end of the month unless you register with us. But that's absolutely a better light pattern than this dark pattern.
Sure. Okay, so the next pattern is friend spam. So in this pattern, the product asks you for your email or social media permissions under the pretense that it'll be used for a desirable outcome. So they're trying to get you to connect with other people already using the service or find friends that are using it. Then what happens is they spam all of your connections in a message that looks like it's from you. When I was looking up examples for this, LinkedIn has been doing this for years, probably since LinkedIn first started. I remember signing up for LinkedIn a long time ago, and I would see people get emails that were either from them, but weren't actually from them, or from me, but weren't actually from me. So this is still LinkedIn, but this is a recent example. I pulled this the other day from their mobile app. You'll see it starts you out into the flow where it looks like you're going to connect with people who are already using LinkedIn, asks you for your permission to your contacts, and then it populates your contacts in a way that makes you think they're already on LinkedIn. But if you'll see in the fine print up at the top, it says contacts not yet on LinkedIn. It's very misleading in that way because you may overlook that.
Yep.
And then what happens again is once you select people that you want to choose from that list, you hit invite and they'll get an email from you, supposedly from you, but it's actually from LinkedIn. Chances are these people are probably already on LinkedIn, it's just using a different email address.
Sure, I've had my father-in-law, ex-father-in-law now, for probably 10 years on my suggested contacts for LinkedIn, and he's a retired teacher, so probably not using LinkedIn for anything at all. So certainly he's not on LinkedIn, and he doesn't want to be either. So and my suggested contacts list is full of people like that. So it's not 68-year-old ex-father-in-laws. I just have one of those, just contacts that aren't on LinkedIn.
Oh yeah. So just one more thing about this one. You can keep this feature on, and what will happen is when it populates contacts into your available people that you can connect to, it just sort of threads these people in to people that are actually using this service. So it's very confusing.
They have a slightly different card, visually speaking, than somebody who's in LinkedIn. But if you're not paying attention, if you're following Steve Krug's principle of don't make me think as a user, then you're not going to catch on that, and you're just going to click the blue buttons. You'll hear us mention Mr. Krug and don't make me think again later on.
Okay, so hidden costs. This is also hidden quizzes or questionnaires. Again, apologies for not being able to see the title of the slide. But what this pattern is, it typically happens, you'll get to the last step of a process. Let's say it's checkout or you've been filling out information for a quiz. Once you get to the last step or near the last step, there will be some unexpected charges, usually delivery or taxes, or there's an unexpected action that you have to take to complete the process. So in this example on the left, this is an e-commerce website. I was trying to order some beef jerky the other day, and I just wanted to see how much shipping was going to be. It wouldn't tell me that up front, so I didn't go through the process because I didn't want to have to get through to checkout and be fully vested in that to find out how much it was going to cost me actually. And the one on the right, this is pretty typical. you see it a lot where you're completing a quiz, and in order to get your results, you have to put your name and your email address in there, and they'll send it to you through email.
Yeah, that's super obnoxious. You know, I took the quiz the other day on who my favorite Star Wars character might be. And, you know, I want to access that information, but I got to enter my information now. I got to give them my name and email address, and they're going to spam me with stuff. I just want to find out that Ren is my favorite Star Wars character. That's all I want. But you know, I'm denied.
I feel like there's a joke in there with Jar Jar Binks or something.
I don't know. There could be. It probably is Jar Jar Binks, unfortunately. Because like Jar Jar Binks, I'm the person that nobody enjoyed. You know? I'm just kidding. All right, so the only jokes I have are self-deprecating jokes. It's the only thing that's going to work.
It seems to be working.
It seems to be working.
Keep it up.
That's right. Speaking of self-deprecating jokes, I'm trying to decide whether I should look at this monitor down here to see what Rachel is talking about, or to look at this monitor up here, and everybody gets to see my bald spot in the other rooms.
It's a 360 view of you.
It is. I don't know which solution is better. Message me in the Slack channel. Let me know.
I feel like for user-centeredness, it's probably looking here and not subjecting that.
Is this a dark pattern?
No, it's a light one.
It's a light. Woo. That was good. That was very good. Okay, that was a little bit of misdirection, and so is this. This is not an image, this is a GIF. It's like 8 seconds. We can watch it loop a couple times in a row. What's happening here in this GIF is I have 9 notifications, and I sign out, and all of a sudden I have 12 notifications. Now, I didn't gain 3 notifications in the 0.2 seconds that it took me to sign out. What's happening is that Facebook instead is getting me to log back in to say, oh, I have new notifications. That number's increased from where I just logged out. Maybe I should log back in and see what that is, right? It's this concept of misdirection of, hey, something has changed, come back in. Your misdirection, you know, is something when we talk about dark patterns, most of the dark patterns are misdirection of some form. They all engage in a concept of misdirection. Misdirection is also its own dark pattern because there are instances where it's just misdirection. They're not doing anything else, like a bait and switch or the friend spam or anything of those. They're just misdirecting you.
There's a lot of overlap with these
Yeah.
dark patterns, and you'll see
Absolutely.
it through the remaining examples that we have, but you'll also see it out in the wild when you're on the web or whatever you're doing. There's a lot of overlap with dark patterns. That's why it's hard to define them, but we do have some boxes around some of the definitions.
That's right. This is my favorite name-wise. This is privacy zuckering, and it's named after Bill Zucker, who was the first gentleman to identify this pattern out in the wild. Thank you. I appreciate it. It's named after Mark Zuckerberg, who you may or may not know is the CEO and head evil dictator of Facebook. And he definitely engages in evil dictator behaviors. He's a king of dark patterns. In fact, you and I noticed that there are 3 sites that continue to pop up in our dark pattern examples. So we've already seen booking.com, and they're going to come up again.
Yep.
We've already seen LinkedIn, and I believe they come up again.
Yes.
And we've seen Facebook on the previous slide. We see Facebook on this slide, and we're going to see Facebook on the next slide. So, Facebook and LinkedIn specifically, dark patterns. Also booking.com apparently, which is just a random odd one, but there it is. So 2 examples on privacy zuckering here. Privacy zuckering is trying to get you to share more information about yourself than you're really intending to share, which is why it's named after Mark Zuckerberg. On the left, we have WhatsApp. WhatsApp got bought by Facebook, and when Facebook switched the terms and conditions and policies from WhatsApp's versions to Facebook's versions, and you had to re-agree to them, one of the interesting features of that slide was that process is that somewhere in that terms and conditions is a slider that is enabled by default and that says, hey, this is enabled, and when you click the agree button, you're agreeing to send your WhatsApp information over to Facebook. Just, we'll improve your ad experience and make money off of you that you didn't intend for us to make money. It's cool. You're fine. It's going to be all right. The second example is pretty much the same thing. How many of you at some point with Facebook have provided them your phone number so you can have two-factor authentication? A lot of us. Well, guess what? Your phone number is searchable now on Facebook. You can't turn it off. At least as of March 1st, I wasn't aware of a way to turn it off. So, you may want to, if you can remove it, may want to remove it. If you're looking into two-factor authentication, I highly suggest you use, I can't remember the name. I blanked on the name. Authy. So check out Authy. It's on both platforms. And what you do is instead of getting a text message, you get a code generated on your phone and you type in that number, and it's a lot more secure. Definitely check out Authy. Try to get that phone number off of Facebook, and screw you, Facebook.
But not yet, because it's our next example. So this is actually Roach Motel, and again, you can't see the name, but that's what it's called. So what this pattern does is it makes it very easy for you to get into a certain situation, but then makes it hard for you to get out of that situation. This is the deactivation process on Facebook. This is an example that was taken just the other day. We make it look simple by breaking it down to the 4-step process that it is. However, it relies on you knowing where to go within each step of this process to get to the next step. There are ways that they can find out if that's how people arrange this information in a hierarchical way. I don't know that they've done that. I don't know that I would have known without searching a lot where to go. Amazon also historically has been bad about this. I think they're getting better with their design over time. They routinely use Roach Motel tactics to make it difficult for you to cancel things like your Prime membership, for example.
Yeah, your Prime membership is still incredibly difficult to cancel. My favorite that came up the other day in this vein was our coworker Stefan, and you said this is Planet Fitness that does this. So in order to cancel your Planet Fitness membership, I got this.
Got it.
Yep. You have to go online, find a form, print out a form, fill it out in paper, and then go to your closest Planet Fitness and turn that paperwork in. So that's definitely a Roach Motel. I know it's only $10 a month, but yeah, it's a big Roach Motel.
Yep.
All right, back to me. We have on our front sneak into basket, otherwise known as into basket. This is when the e-commerce site that you're visiting and attempting to purchase something from is going to add something to your basket that they want you to buy because they get revenue from it, they get third-party advertising revenue from it. You don't want to buy it, almost certainly, because you didn't add it to your cart. And probably even when you do find out that it's there, you're kind of like, wait, what? I get a magazine and a free giant mug? Okay, no. I mean, I recognize that I'm spending $185 on boots, and maybe I have an extra pound, to spend on this, but I don't think I want it. So, this is not cool. Ticket sites like Live Nation and Ticketmaster are also really bad for this, where they'll sneak in like a Rolling Stones prescription. That's what Mick Jagger gets, is a Rolling Stone prescription. Subscription, that's the word.
There it is.
Yeah.
You're going to get there.
The words are coming to me today, I promise. You don't want a Rolling Stone subscription. Nobody does.
Or a prescription.
Or a prescription.
Nobody wants that either.
Unless you're Mick Jagger. So, all right, we're up next to trick question, confusing wording. This one's fun. This is the number one dark pattern that I think takes advantage of Don't Make Me Think. So Steve Krug wrote a book back in 2000 called Don't Make Me Think. It's one of the seminal works on user experience, I think, and he really boils it down to these very, very, very simple concepts, the title of which is Don't Make Me Think, obviously. And the concept is, anytime you have an interaction or a workflow for a user and that user has to think about what to do next or think about what choices they have to make, then you're creating a negative user experience because you're taking them out of what should be a fairly intuitive workflow. This is confusing wording, tricky questions, intentionally takes advantage of the fact that people aren't thinking when they go through these things. So let's say in this example, I'm entering details to reserve an item from currys.co.uk, and the first checkbox says, please do not send me details of products and offers from currys.co.uk. Okay, check. Now, the confusing wording on the second one is, please send me details of products and offers from third-party organizations recommended by curry.co.uk. Nobody read either one of those. They read the first 4 words, please do not send, of the first checkbox. They checked it, they checked the second checkbox, and they clicked reserve items. This is intentionally taking advantage of the don't make me think principle and using confusing wording and tricky questions and getting users to sign up for something that they didn't intend to sign up for. There are a ton of examples of this. This is just, to me, a great one because it's just right there on the screen. This is probably the second most common dark design pattern you see, not on the web necessarily, but in your email inbox in this case, which may or may not be on the web. We have the invisible or hard to find unsubscribe. This example is from 2017, so maybe Victoria's Secret's gotten better about this. I haven't gotten a Victoria's Secret email in about a year, so.
Liar.
Well, I worked there, that's why I can say that.
Liar.
This unsubscribe is invisible for a couple of reasons. First off, I have an arrow pointing to it, but of course, it doesn't say unsubscribe, it says, please click here. So there's the first part of the invisibility. You're looking for the word unsubscribe. Everybody's looking for the word unsubscribe. So they've already altered your mindset on this. Second off, you have to read that whole friggin' paragraph to find it because it's not underlined, it's not in pink text, which is what Victoria's Secret would do if they cared about it. You're not gonna find it. So you gotta read that thing, it's not underlined, you gotta click the correct place, and they double down on it because when you go to it, you still gotta enter your email address, which, like, guys, you know the email address that I came from, you're intentionally not using that, this sucks, screw you, Victoria's Secret. Of course, the best flow is, I think it's either MailChimp or Constant Contact, I don't know which one that does it. You click, one click unsubscribe, it goes through like 3 screens. I don't know why it shows you the 3 screens because you have no time to interact with any of them. And then it says, you're done, tell us why you unsubscribe. That's obviously a desired light pattern here. This is definitely a dark pattern.
So this is our last example. This is FOMO, and FOMO stands for fear of missing out. This pattern is an aggressive visual approach used primarily to try to make a sale. So what this tricky maneuver does is it makes it look like the item that you're thinking about purchasing or, in this case, reserving. It makes you think that it's going to sell out really fast. It puts pressure on you to make a fast decision. So here's booking.com again. We said it would come back up, and here it is. They're probably the worst site out there. I'm sure there are other examples, but this was one that we routinely went back to try to find a really good visual for.
Hey, Rachel, which one should I click on? Is there one that's in high demand?
They're all in high demand.
Oh.
The highest demand.
Oh my.
The highest of demands.
Which one's in higher demand?
That's a great question. So the one at the top, they have 3 different visual treatments to try to tell you that it's in high demand. The one right under that, they're saying specifically there are only 2 rooms left. I have no idea which one is selling faster. They both seem like they're going incredibly fast. This was also for Columbus for this weekend. So if you ended up getting a room here, I guess you're lucky because they were selling really, really fast.
Well, you either got the in high demand option or you got the in high demand option with only 2 rooms left. So luckily you got one of those 2 rooms. Also, note the lovely green text on the second one. That's just that extra green is friendly, green is peaceful incentive.
Green is go.
Green is go. You know, you can cancel later, just go ahead and reserve, it's fine. Forced continuity is a thing, you know.
Right.
Shall we?
We shall.
All right.
So those are examples. So now that we know what dark UX is and some of the forms it takes, let's talk about why it happens. No, sorry, we missed a slide.
We did.
Because it isn't as simple as deciding not to use dark patterns. Sometimes design teams full of really great people, and I'm paraphrasing here, of course, because you can read this, but sometimes design teams full of really great people have a clean slate to work from, and they suggest some really crazy stuff. That happens. I've done it. A lot of other people have done it.
Marco's done it.
You click next. Okay, but why though? So based on our research, we feel that a dark pattern exists for two main reasons. The first one is it's unintentional. Unintentional dark UX patterns happen when design isn't user-centered. If we don't know our users' needs, how do we design for them? And the second is it's intentional. Are you clicking? Did you click?
I clicked now.
Thank you.
What are you, I'm supposed to be paying attention to you?
Yeah, I'm sorry. So the second is it's intentional. Intentional dark UX patterns are often a result of business goals being prioritized above users' needs. We talked a little bit about this earlier with one of our dark patterns. So it would go something like, if we tell users the quantity is limited, they'll buy sooner, right? Sure, what could go wrong?
Or, hey, the more people we have subscribed for our newsletter, the better off we're doing, right?
Sure, of course, because they're all reading it.
Absolutely.
So let's say that you spotted some dark UX patterns, but you're unsure if these were unintentional or intentional. Here are some ways that you can tell the difference within your organization.
So we're going to start with unintentional. And one thing you might hear is, I didn't know, or it seemed fine to me. And what you want to do is you want to be able to redirect that type of a comment back to the person you're talking with in a friendly manner that doesn't make them feel like they are being put on the defensive. That's really important. And all of this is to engage the person you're having a conversation with in a friendly manner, because if you put them on the defensive, the likelihood of you succeeding in backing out of dark patterns is low. But if you can rope them in as an ally toward user experience, then they engage and they're more interested in creating better patterns. So one thing you might say to the I didn't know person is you could say, well, what do you think a user might want to do at this point in their journey versus what this workflow currently wants them to do?
Right.
Another thing that you might hear, I've heard this a ton of times, we know our users want this. This is typically coming from your product owner or your account manager. And what you want to say back to this person, how you want to rope them in is, can you help me with how you came to understand this to be the case? Where did we get to, we know our users want this? What information are you using to tell me that that's the case, right? And finally, you might hear, and this is kind of a variation on the first one, but it's a little different. Our SME or our representative said users like this. So it's a little different in that your product owner is probably still telling you this, and they're probably still being prescriptive and saying, this is what I think that the users want. But instead of them saying it based off of their analysis, they're saying it based off of the SME's analysis.
Sure. You have that one person that's the representative for all users, and they're saying, I know for a fact that people want to do this.
That's right.
Oftentimes they have been a user in that situation before.
Or are currently a user.
Or are currently a user, and that's how they do it.
Yes.
So they think all users do it that way.
Yeah, I ran into this scenario with a project about 2 years ago where we asked them, the first thing we want to do is we'd like to do some research. Can we talk to your potential users? No, it's okay. Our subject matter expert knows, they've talked to the users, we've done some focus groups, we know what we need to do here. We've done research. And I didn't really have an opportunity to say, no, we have to fit this in. We needed to get the ball rolling, and I had other things that I had to focus on. I was also the Scrum Master and the visual designer. So it was okay to be like, yeah, okay, fine, we're going to move on. it later bit us in the butt because as we started doing user testing, what we found out is the flow was convoluted and not accessible to the users. And when we kind of pushed back on that and said, hey, we thought you guys did research, we thought this is what your users wanted, and what it came back is, oh no, the director of that department designed the flows, and this is how she does it. So this is what she wanted. And we have to kind of then push back on them and be like, hey, just so you know, like, it's not what your users want. It might be what you want. Okay, so we're meeting all of our KPIs. This is intentional. This is on the intentional side. We're meeting all of our KPIs. Why should we change? Well, that's a good question. What you want to push back on is to say, listen, maybe we could exceed our KPIs, or maybe we have the wrong KPIs in place. Maybe we're not measuring the right things. For example, maybe measuring the number of subscribers we have to our newsletter isn't the right KPI. Maybe the engagement with the newsletter is the right KPI.
Sure.
The second example is we're getting the users to do what we want, so what's wrong? Like, we're getting what we want. Well, first off, in consumer applications, users have choices. So they may just decide to go somewhere else. Everything consumer-driven has an alternative to it right now. They may have other ways as well where, we can accomplish your business goals and also accomplish user goals simultaneously, and maybe we should look into those options instead. And finally, the driver you want to push to your business users and whoever is saying this to you is to say, listen, this is a bit of a dark pattern. We want to convert this to a light pattern and still meet your business goals.
Yep.
Okay.
So I think we can all agree that dark UX equals bad UX. And now that we know what these dark patterns are and why they might happen, let's talk about how we can avoid dark UX before it makes its way into development. So we really liked this quote by Nielsen Norman. We think it does a good job of conveying what UX is or should be. So the first requirement for an exemplary user experience is to meet the exact needs of the customer without fuss or bother. Next comes simplicity and elegance that produce products that are a joy to own, a joy to use. So my follow-up question to that is, okay, but how do I know the exact needs of the customer? Which means you need to do research. So as we mentioned before, in unintentional situations, sometimes dark patterns exist due to lack of understanding about the user. In order to craft experiences and create designs that are user-centered and that avoid dark UX, we must understand the wants, needs, and motivations of our user. Analytics are good. I'm not saying that you should not do analytics, but analytics can only tell you what's happened. It's not going to tell you the why behind user behavior. So in order to get to that level of understanding, you have to talk to your users. So, sorry, go back. This is especially true when you're crafting new experiences. But let's say you're implementing functionality into an existing experience. Analytics can be helpful to make sure that you don't cause too much disruption to their normal flow. I love research. I do research all the time. I could talk about research forever and talk about different methodologies that you could use, but we don't have enough time for that, so I won't go into it for this talk. However, I will briefly talk about the win of UX research. There are many different takes on the design process. Some of you might have your own flavor if you are designers or you are involved in the design process. For the purposes of this talk, I'll reference a simple happy path that I borrowed from Nielsen Norman. So to understand the wants and needs of your users, you'll need to focus your research efforts within the empathize phase. That's when we are going to get in front of our users and conduct research to find out who they are, what they want, what they need, and what their motivations are. And then to validate that what you've created meets those needs and wants and doesn't cause disruption, we'll need to conduct research during the test phase. That's when you take a prototype, put it in front of users, and get feedback on, does this work, is this what they need, and then is this what we had determined that their motivations are and that it meets that.
So what's next? We've arrived at the development phase of the project. Maybe it's waterfall, maybe it's sprint, and we've done some, sprint zero design work up front. And we're here and we're about to start developing this, and there are still dark patterns. So this can come about because of missed opportunities. This can come about because maybe designers were inexperienced, or maybe there were no designers, or maybe the business demanded a specific design. There's a lot of different ways we can get here. The question is, what do we do now? I like this quote. This is from Earley Mabakov, I think is her name. We'll see that name again in a second. My advice to interaction designers then is to consider employing a dark pattern in your next wireframe. Later, replace it with an equally powerful positive counterpart. This quote is relevant here because it's one of the examples of something we talk about how we can fix dark patterns after we're in the development phase. The first step is recognizing dark patterns. And we just taught you how to recognize dark patterns, hopefully. So that's definitely the first step. If you know that you understand what a dark pattern is, then you can try to fix it through design feedback. So the second thing that you can absolutely do is provide design feedback to your designer, to your product owner, to whoever that source was, and say, listen, I think maybe we've built in a dark pattern here, and I'd like to propose maybe an alternative that is a light pattern that uses, user design best practices, or is more consistent with maybe some of the user research that we did, or whatever the case may be. So even as developers, even as QA folks, we should be confident in our ability to raise our hands and speak to the designers and say, hey, I think we've got a dark pattern here. And the designers, you want to hear that.
Designers are trained in that, or they should be. They're trained to receive feedback, and generally they're going to try to elicit feedback from you. They want to make sure that whatever they're designing isn't impossible to build. So hopefully they're coming to you and saying, can we do this? Is this doable? And including you in that process. At that time, that would be a great opportunity to provide feedback if you have some.
Absolutely. Just remember too, when you need to raise an issue with a dark pattern, provide solutions, don't just come with problems. Again, when you come with a problem, the odds of it getting fixed in your favor are not great. But when you come with a solution, it may not be the solution that ends up getting chosen, but it does direct the conversation in the correct path, whereas just coming with a problem is pretty open to chaos.
And it gets people thinking, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. We have a second quote.
Got it.
Tongue-tied. Quote. We have a second quote. But as a content strategist, I try to keep in mind that words, or patterns, as the case may be, are neither good nor bad. Rather, they're powerful or weak. The author, Marley, later goes on to clarify that there are powerful negative experiences, powerful positive experiences, and weak negative and positive experiences. Dark patterns are powerful negative experiences. What we want to be able to do, and this applies to developers, designers, user researchers, testers, whatever the case may be, is to identify dark patterns and remove its darkness. Now, Dwight is obviously correct all the time. He's not really correct in this instance. We're going to try and find some light in this darkness of a dark pattern. It's never too late to provide design feedback, okay? It's never too late to say, this could be better, this could have a better user experience, this is a friggin' dark pattern. So always be aware of that fact. One of the great solutions that you can utilize is A/B testing here, okay? And we'll talk about that more on the next slide. But again, focus on providing solutions. Don't focus on raising problems. Your voice will be heard if you come with solutions. Okay, so one does not simply ignore accessibility. Just, did I skip a slide? I must have skipped a slide. Okay, I'm going to come back to this slide. I did want to talk about A/B testing here. I apologize. These note cards have failed me. It's your fault.
Fair enough.
They're a great example for removing darkness from a dark pattern is to do an A/B test. So for example, let's say I have a hidden cost dark pattern. And if you remember, a hidden cost dark pattern is where at the front of the process, we don't tell you about certain costs, like maybe a shipping cost. But then downstream, when you go to purchase, there it is. There's a shipping cost. There's a packaging fee or whatever the case
Shipping
might
and
be.
handling.
Shipping and handling, whatever, right? Well, this is a really simple one to A/B test. You simply create your B test, and your B test gets rid of the hidden cost. It puts it up front. When the user adds this thing to the cart and they view their cart, there's the price, there's the cost, including the formerly hidden cost item. You should be able to look at those metrics and say, hey, our cart abandonment rates went down when we included the costs up front. Our cart abandonment rates are higher with hidden costs than without hidden cost. This is a great example of how we can remove the dark from a pattern and make it a powerful, positive experience instead. Now I'm ready to talk about Boromir. And Boromir says, one does not simply ignore accessibility. I agree. Accessibility itself is a dark pattern. Now, we don't have, accessibility is 10 other presentations worth of material, much like research is. But accessibility is a dark pattern. If your users have needs for an accessible website, then if you build a website that isn't accessible, the whole website becomes a dark pattern for that user. Either they're using JAWS or they're using some sort of screen reader, and it's not jumping to the modal when you open a modal, or whatever the case may be. I'm not going to run through all the examples. We're running out of time here. But the point is, if you can do nothing else, okay? So we've tried to design light patterns instead of dark patterns, and maybe we've succeeded and maybe we've failed. We've gotten into development. We've tried to correct them in development, and maybe we've succeeded and maybe we've failed. And we've done A/B testing, and maybe we haven't done A/B testing. But the end result is, if you can't do anything else, ensure the site is accessible and you are providing a better user experience. You are converting a powerful negative experience into a powerful light experience for a subset of your users. So definitely factor accessibility into what you do. That's it, folks. I'm out of jokes.
Well, maybe.
Maybe. I'm never out of jokes, but my wife, by the way, says I'm not funny, so thank you all for laughing at me. I do appreciate that. And I went for the presentation, for most of the presentation, on the side view so that they not only get to see my face, but they also get to see my belly and the bald spot. Figured it was like the full trifecta.
Sure.
Yeah, so it's a win for everybody that's not in this room. Thanks, guys. Please enjoy the movie. Go get to your theaters where you're going to see it.
Does anyone have any questions before we part ways? There was one question that someone submitted on Slack. We can answer that really quick. Or if you're in the room, is this weird? Tell us and we'll answer it out loud. Otherwise, we'll answer it in the Slack channel. We'll just answer it in the Slack channel. It's fine.
Yeah, don't speak up. We don't want to hear from you. I'm just kidding. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
You guys are a great audience. Thank you. Don't forget to tip your waiter.